weekly show devoted to the outdoor hospitality industry, hosted by Searl and Cara Csizmadia. You'll hear from special guests that focus on topics to help your business succeed, all backed by Modern Campground, the most innovative news source in the industry.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of MC Fireside Chats by the fire this week once again, because it's cold here in Canada still, even though it's April. I'm really trying to sort that out with Cara still, but we haven't been able to just quite yet, kind of flipping back and forth. So super excited to have another episode here of our open discussion show. We've got a couple people joining us. Hopefully some stragglers will come in. They tell us they were going to miss the show, but they're not here yet. So we've got Mr. Scott Foos here with us and Mr. Randy Hendrickson as well, as Cara, who's here with me always from the Canadian Camping and RV Council. So first, before we get started, we have a sponsored episode today. Our very first sponsored episode, probably because I've just taken so long to let everybody know that we have sponsored episodes available. We're very excited to welcome a sponsor to this show who will be sponsoring every single week, Fireside Accounting, which is why I'm sitting by a fire, right? I started this just for this accounting firm, but it's a really good company run by a woman named Lindsay Foos, who has been in the industry for many, many years, who actually happens to be Scott's wife. Am I allowed to say that, Scott, while I'm talking about her? I feel like they would have put two and two together, but just link that up. But Lindsay, I've known Lindsay and Scott for a number of years. Lindsay owns a fantastic accounting firm. She does all the accounting bookwork for Horizon, all the properties, right, that you manage, Scott?
Yep, that's right.
And so, Cara, do you want to just tell us a little about Fireside Accounting?
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. Spend your time focusing on growing your business, not on data entry. As experienced outdoor hospitality professionals, the team at Fireside Accounting understands the challenges of day-to-day operations for your property. It is with this detailed knowledge of outdoor hospitality operations and campground accounting best practices that they have developed a comprehensive set of services for your business's accounting needs. For more information, you can visit firesideaccounting.com.
So if you guys, obviously you're campground owners and operators here, but if you're looking for somebody who really has in-depth knowledge of the industry and focuses on accounting as it relates specifically to campsites and takes advantage of all those tax discounts and codes and things that I don't even know about because I'm definitely not an accountant, you really need to reach out to Lindsay because she can figure out ways to save you guys taxes and do your business properly. So I really appreciate your team of Fireside Accounting sponsoring our episode here at MC Fireside Chats. And let's get started here. We're having an open discussion, right? Super excited. What's going on, Randy, Scott? What's happening?
Yeah, Brian, I just mentioned to you, your audio is quite quiet, but we're picking up lots of background noise from you.
For me?
You. So I don't know if you have audio settings, but oh yeah.
Were you able to hear what I said, or is it all?
Yeah.
I got a headset. I don't know why it's not. Anyway, you guys continue while I figure that out.
Right. Awesome. The beeping is more of the problem. Whatever that is. Anyway.
So I apologize for that. Did we hear about Fireside Accounting? I just want to make sure because they're really good. Okay, cool. Because I've known Lindsay for so many years, and I know how knowledgeable she is, and so I just want to make sure everybody knows that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I know for me as a former campground owner, I remember having to train my accountant the basics about campgrounds in the industry to really get to a great level of service. So I love that Lindsay's really focused on the industry and doing a great job for campground operators. And I'd love to know if there's a Canadian, if there's an option for Canadian parks for Fireside Accounting, or if is she interested in expanding?
We're gonna have to have her. We're gonna have to have her on the show one time to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love that. That would be really great. I think it's a big kind of missing niche here in Canada, specifically in this industry. So, like I said, my accountant over the years slowly kind of really embraced it, and it turned out to be really great. But there was a learning curve there for sure. So I love that Lindsay's got such a great focus on the industry specifically. I'm interested to hear, Scott, you mentioned that you are doing like job fair stuff and some cool things right now. Give us an update about what you're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, for so many park operators, April is a month of major change. The snowbird properties are winding down their seasons. Our northern properties are coming out of hibernation, and we're staffing up. We are setting up properties. Today, I'm in northern New England, in New Hampshire. We have a few properties up here that we manage, and it's the time of year to start hiring local teams. So we are this year we're trying something new. We're hosting a job fair over a couple of days here, and tapping into the local community who embraces and supports and is very used to seasonal tourist demand and all of the work that goes along with that. So we're tapping into that great skill set and market. It's been very successful, thankfully. It's been hard to hire almost everywhere. So we know that guests expect a great experience, and we want to hit that. We also know that guests are being very patient right now, knowing that with everything right now that it's difficult to hit the mark on so many different levels. So we're busy this month, not just with staffing, but placing bulk orders for things like chlorine and stocking up on supplies for things that are only going to continue to increase in costs that we need for the season. Is a great time right now to be doing it if you haven't done it already. Getting our parks de-winterized as well and ready. There's just so much work that's involved with that. It's, as I know so many operators can resonate with. I was at the Northeast Campground Association conference in Boston 3 weeks ago, and talking with many of the seasonal operators there, that that was kind of the last chance they had to break away before they are locked in for the next 6 months.
Yep, absolutely. It's always an exciting time in the industry, but it's busy and hectic. The job fair thing, did you mention? I think I caught that this is your first time. You haven't explored that before?
No, we have not. We have not had the need to do that before. And with a demand for work campers at an all-time high, we have increased hourly wages by at least $2 to $3 more than we were paying last year, which was increased several dollars over the year before. So wages have moved significantly, and that has helped. But there are only so many work campers out there, and there are so many. With parks being so much busier than they ever have been, we just need more folks to keep that experience level where we want it to be. So we thought about the job fair route this year. Actually, we had a great tip-off from Marcia Gavin with Normandy Farms Campground in Foxborough, which is a beautiful property. And she mentioned that they had gone through a job fair, and they had 30 people they needed to hire, and they had 30 people show up. So it's tight, but it worked for them. So we wanted to try it here, and we have filled all but 2 positions in 2 days, so it's worked out well.
Amazing.
Hey, Scott, I got a question for you, buddy. Excuse me. Everybody has been talking for a long time, and we've been talking on this show for a long time. People are hard to find. It's just hard to find enough people that want to work. But then you've got the further thing in a experience-rich industry, as Horizon excels in so well. How do you not only find the bodies, but find the right cultural fit for your company to give the best service? Because there's step one, right? Just to get people to show up. But then what are your criteria to find those really good experiential hospitality profiles?
We listen for the smile in their voice. You're hiring the personality. You're hiring someone that you want to talk to and spend time with. If they don't have the skill sets that might be required, we can teach those. And we have a platform, an online learning management system that allows folks that might not have any experience to go through training on day one to really learn how to check people in and use the systems and that sort of thing. So we'd rather find people that have that smile in their voice, that care, which can be very difficult. But you can't teach people to care. You do or you don't. And it can be extremely challenging. We don't hit the mark every time, but it has worked relatively well for us.
Yeah, that sounds right. Skills can be acquired, as you said. Experience, quite frankly, sometimes can mean they've been making the same mistakes for so long that they're no longer coachable. That's unfortunately, that's the flip side of experience. But I completely agree with you. Having that care gene or that care part of the personality, you're born with it. It's really hard to teach that. It's either part of who you are or it is not. So kudos. I know you do a fantastic job getting great people.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so far so good. And we're really excited. The guests, the team that's coming together at our properties all have this idea that this season's going to be record breaking despite fuel prices, despite economy woes. And instead of being overwhelmed by it, most everyone is empowered by it. They're energized by it. This is why we're in this business, is to make vacations memories and create these experiences. So finding those people that have that care gene only makes it more infectious so that everybody can pull through those crazy days together, preparing for the season and then actually going through the season as well.
I imagine it also contributes to this really positive environment that I would hope facilitates like return staff. Like, do you have big turnover, or do you see the same work campers coming back season after season?
Yeah, we thankfully we do have a lot of returning work campers. There is always the work campers they got into full-time RVing for a reason. They want to experience new areas, so that can be difficult to keep people coming back year over year. But we're very fortunate in that we have a portfolio of properties that we manage that they can travel around in between. So we have an internal way for folks to understand opportunities of the properties for the next season. And they already know our systems and policies and that sort of thing. So that certainly has helped.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage. I think it would be valuable. A couple of campgrounds last year, I think, up here in Canada kind of partnered up because they had work campers who were keen to see other parts of the country. And so they did kind of a trade.
That's
and I
great.
really like the idea. Yeah, I think kind of continuing to spearhead stuff like that is really just collaborative and supportive of each other, but also kind of solves one of our biggest hurdles we're facing right now, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, just throwing this out there as well, that what I posted on LinkedIn a day or two ago, that we're looking for recruitment services as well for general manager level positions, corporate positions. And there seems to be there's a number of great job boards out there. And there's a number of great opportunities for folks to look at available jobs, but it seems to be very scattered. There doesn't seem to be a central location where that can be set up. So if someone were able to spend the time and resources to create that, that would be time well spent to have a more centralized location for job board postings, but then also maybe layer in recruitment services on top of that.
Yeah, well, we've actually just launched one at CCRVC, a jobs board, specifically for Canadian campgrounds to post positions and openings and availability. And then we kind of connect them with applicants and things like that, obviously with the help of Brian, who does all our web development stuff. But we're hoping to kind of mirror those listings in the respective provinces as well to get those listings more exposure. But I mean, we definitely have to approach the staffing thing from lots of angles, I think, to help alleviate some of that strain this year, as we see, record camping and not enough bodies in parks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also the evolution of the job board itself has evolved quite a bit, in particular just the last few years, certainly the last several, but the last couple in particular, because there's a need to attract good people from sister industries like the hotel industry or what have you like that. And there's more specialization as more intelligent capital comes in. The operational requirements are quite a bit higher, so they're looking for a higher quality candidate. And so to be able to kind of find by level of skill or what's required by these larger companies is pretty important to find that good talent. So just throwing everybody into a heap to sort through is not as efficient as kind of targeting and segmenting by position, by role, and what have you. So there's room for that, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Randy, what have you been up to? Give us your update.
Absolutely bored. I sleep most of the day, and a little bit long in solitary.
Lies.
It's crazy. It's like we've talked about so many times before, and Scott, you and I've talked about it. We talked about it quite a bit. Also, there's just never been anything like this, and I think we've talked before about strategic planning used to be looking a year and ahead, and now it's trying to figure out what's happening by 4 p.m. Everything is just changing so dramatically, and it's no secret. We've all heard the data. The intelligent capital is coming in. They're buying properties. Gone are the days of trying to find 300 sites in the Sun Belt. Good luck. They've gone to secondary and tertiary markets, smaller properties with expansion land. And again, these aren't secrets or anything like that. It's just the natural wave of supply and demand as people look to deploy their capital and find good assets that they can reposition. That's where it's all going. So we are extremely active. We've added 2 brokers this past week. We've added a gentleman to handle marina sales for us up in the Northeast, but he has a national network because we see marinas as a very natural tie to outdoor hospitality, kind of that whole experiential thing. So we're very excited about launching that whole marina division. And again, the whole idea is not just marinas, but with a few acres adjacent to throw in some other accommodations and make it an outdoor hospitality product. We're very excited about that. We just added his name is Mark Anton, great guy. Another gentleman, David Dumanel, we just added in Texas, former Eagle Scout, former Air Force, masters in real estate. We're just very blessed and fortunate that he's agreed to come on board with United Park Brokers. He's primarily working the Texas market because that's a very active market, and that's where he's based. But, Scott, to your point, and I know we've had this conversation many times over the years, you're only as good as who you have working with you. And very conspicuously saying working with you and not working for you, right? Because there just isn't that delineation where team members with different roles and different aptitudes. Everybody on the UPB team has a unique skill that we all play off of one another. And they've got the personality and the ethics and the golden rule type of thing that, again, it's an embarrassment of riches to have these caliber of people joining the team, and we couldn't be happier. It helps us serve our clients better, makes us more efficient, and they're just at the top of their game. We're very happy and very busy.
Yeah, which is great. I think it speaks to the kind of cultural foundation you've carefully cultivated for UPB. I think, that stuff kind of naturally draws good people. And so I'm excited for you and happy to hear, not surprised at all, but happy to hear it's going so well.
The fun thing, not to get too much in the theoretical rut here, but I think we've had conversations on the show previously, and Scott, you and I've certainly had the conversations before. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's always a challenge to find good people. But with UPB, we didn't start with how are we going to sell more parks and what markets will we serve. We started by what is the culture of the company. Mm-hmm. Co-founder Peter Meyer and I just kind of sat down before we ever did anything and said, who are we? What is our mission? What are our values? And we know that anything we do in the future, we're going to reference back to, are we serving the core mission? So it all begins with a culture. Absent a culture, you can't grow anything. It's my personal strong belief. And so with that cultural basis, it's easier for people to say, I identify with the culture you're projecting. It makes sense to me. I want to belong to that. And it's the whole idea of building something together in mass with the various talents to build something collaboratively that reflects our values. There's no greater joy in the world than going to work every day in that kind of environment. And that in turn helps us retain good people.
Absolutely. It's such a cultural thing for sure. Sorry, I'm just pulling up some news here, and I'm seeing Scott. You mentioned you're in New Hampshire right now. I'm seeing some news about a big, massive water park opening at a Jellystone right there. Are you gonna add some water park features to compete?
You know, the one of the properties that we have up here is I'm not even going to say the river name because I will butcher it,
Okay.
but it's beautiful, and it has a lot of natural amenities to it. But no, no water parks up here right now. But it's a smart move, and I'm quite sure that that's a Sun community or some tie into it. Yeah, they're doing wonderful work on that. We are in Texas. We are finalizing plans to add a lazy river at a location with a break-off wading pool. You know, water is king. If you're on natural water, great. If you're not, create it, and you know, create reasons and ways for kids to be able to spend all day in the water, and you will have repeat customers.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it looks awesome. I'm looking at photos here. It looks really great, really great. I wish we had more capability for that stuff up here in Canada.
Yes, yeah.
So short, it's tough to make those kinds of big investments. But yeah, we are. It's interesting to me to hear about this really positive, like record-breaking outlook for 2022 from you guys, because we are hearing concerning things this side of the border a little bit in terms of reservations kind of lagging behind last year at this point, and maybe those will pick up as things become more certain about restrictions lifting and all those kinds of things here in Canada. But there is some concerns about folks kind of being able to travel in other ways again, and maybe experience different vacation styles again after quite a long period of not being able to. Do you get the sense down there that anyone is feeling that, or have you guys passed that? You've been open and things have functional for so much longer. Are you past that and we're back to business?
I think we've had maybe more of a renegade culture to get back into travel, and maybe we're a little bit beyond that potentially. But you know, I can share across the portfolio of properties that we manage. I just reviewed our weekly numbers right before this call, and we are still progressing up. We have our March numbers that have come in. It's interesting. All the properties that we manage that are destination or snowbird properties meet or beat our budgets, which were pretty aggressive that we set before fuel prices started to spike. Those properties that could be maybe considered just as an example of a relation to a KOA journey or a stopover property, those properties have been a bit more affected, but we still came in at like 90%. On average of budget, which is up and over last year still. So we're pleased with that. We saw such a tremendous momentum in booking heading into this year for next year that the base of reservations that was already in place was significantly high, and it was much higher than it was the year before. So while we have started to see a shift in the dynamics of stay types at properties, meaning we're seeing maybe fewer reservations come in, but the average length of stay has increased by a night or a night and a half or more. You know, and we're not discounting. We're still taking it, you know, recognizing the demand that's coming in and pricing ourselves appropriately. So we've seen this shift in booking dynamics, but the number of cancellations that we're receiving is far fewer than the number of reservations that are still coming in. It's just the reservations that are coming in are slightly different than they were before. So most of our peak properties in the summer months, the peak weekends were plus or minus 10% of where we were last year already, with occupancy that's on the books. And that's with rates that, you know, are increased somewhere up sometimes as high as 15 to 25% over last year. So we're still very optimistic, but we are monitoring it closely. We're really monitoring those journey type properties, the overnight properties, to see how they're being affected. I think they'll be affected the most.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, well, it's always interesting to me to kind of pay attention to what's happening down there, because we kind of sort of follow behind you guys a little bit. So, I like to pay attention and stay on top of it. And, I'm hopeful that people are kind of just biding time to book, because it's still, it's early in the season. We don't know what's happening with gas prices. And that, once summer comes around and folks are ready to, put their equipment back to use and all of that, get out of storage, that things will pick up. I think there's areas of the country that kind of almost never have concerns. They book out and long in advance and all of that. And so I think we do need to potentially get creative about just sustaining this extreme level of interest and enjoyment specific to camping in that we've had in the last couple of years. And I don't know exactly what that will look like. It's going to take some creativity, I think, but overall, given RV sales, they got to keep camping, right? We've got to keep them camping.
You see, excuse me, that's the thing. Going back into my distant past, every time there was a fuel issue or fuel spike, we had some of our best years. So It's not that, yeah, and it seems like a complete anomaly, right? But the truth of the matter is, if you live in LA, you may not go to Yosemite, but you'll go to Santa Barbara, but stay for a couple extra days. So to Scott's point, it's a little bit narrow band you draw from, but it's longer duration.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about it from an economic standpoint, with RV sales, as you mentioned, Cara, absolutely through the roof, you probably didn't buy it to park it. And it ends up being the incremental. So what I mean by that is, if you were going to travel at, just call it $4 a gallon, are you going to stay home because it's $5 a gallon? It's the $1 incremental, right? Yeah. If you're going to spend $4, don't you spend the extra buck and whatever? If you just if you go 100 miles versus 400 miles, you see what I mean? I mean, you didn't buy it to park it. You bought it to use it. So I personally don't worry that much about fuel prices. It's not fun as a consumer. Inflation's no fun. But gas prices themselves, I don't think, make people park their RV.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be interesting to see how it impacts the behavior of our consumers. And like you said, how far they travel and duration of stay. It's I think one of our biggest hurdles in Canada is we're kind of missing the fundamental framework to really measure those metrics. And I think we have to work hard on establishing that in a better way. We need to do better at that, because right now we're kind of measuring things oftentimes in hindsight instead of being able to make predictions and plans and be more strategic about stuff. So yeah, there's some things up here to work on, but I do agree. I think I have lots of camping friends who have said, like, we might camp less often this summer, but we're still gonna get out. We might go less far, but which is great. Obviously, that equipment investment is such a vital kind of component of that. All those decisions being made, for sure.
And Cara, one thing that I wanted to mention too, when you talked about Canadian bookings maybe being a bit slower this year compared to last year, the other thing we're hearing on the far opposite side of the United States, in the Sunbelt states, is that those guests are staying longer. And we have at those snowbird properties that we manage, we have guests that have extended another month. So it'll be interesting to see how northern US and Canadian properties are impacted by maybe having a slightly delayed start to their season, potentially, by folks that are staying put, waiting to see what gas prices are going to do. They're taking their time. I'm also, we're tied into a large influencer marketing network of full-time families, and we're hearing directly from them saying, we are traveling much slower. We're taking our time. We're breaking up the expense of long trips into, if something would have taken us a week to travel, we're going to make it a month's journey, which is good for us because they're spending more time at our properties.
Yep. And that trickle down kind of domino effect. Oh, yes, I can hear you. Yes. Hello.
Hey, it actually worked. Okay, sorry. Continue. You're doing a great job without me. I don't even need to be here.
Yeah. We have a comment from Jacob. Randy, do you think that fuel prices will affect the commuter parks? Ones that usually get their business from people that aren't using them as their final destinations.
I think perhaps, but I think again it goes back to, you're going to keep traveling. Some people may not travel quite as much as they did. They might travel a shorter distance. I don't think commuter parks are really going to, by what I'm understanding by the definition of commuter park, I don't think they're going to see some dramatic fall off. You've also got some other dynamic happening there too. If you've got a trend line like this of new RVers that are buying new RVs and whatnot, and a few of those decide it's just too expensive, inflation's too much, I'm not going to do it, you still have the preponderance of a huge net influx of new travelers hitting the road. So even if some are going to stay home and not travel as far, or maybe just park it for a little while, you've still got the confluence of a massive amount of people who are new RV consumers and new campers to help buoy some of that. So I really don't see a precipitous fall off in those type of in commuter parks or transient parks. I just don't see it. Travel habits will change, but I think, to Scott's point, and please correct me, Scott, if I'm wrong, and I probably am, but occupancy and rates probably don't get hit too much, but who your person is in the park is what changes, to your point. It's somebody staying longer, maybe not as many transient people, but your ADR and your occupancy probably even out. It's just a different consumer, the distance they've traveled to get to you, but they're still filling your park. Is that pretty much right?
I totally agree with that. Absolutely. We're seeing it. Yeah.
Right on.
And, something else to kind of think about with that too. I'm sorry, Cara.
No.
I was just going to say, folks are going to travel. They are going to, if they can afford to, they're going to travel. They're tired of being home. They're ready to get back to normalcy. As someone that spends way too much time in the air, I can tell you that ticket prices for airlines continue to scale up as well with fuel prices. Everyone's impacted by fuel prices. So if you're looking at a destination trip where you're going to jump on a plane and you may spend an extra $100 to $200 a ticket right now per person to get there, that far outweighs the cost of the additional fuel in your RV or your truck to get to the destination that you're going. And one last point that I would make with that too, just because we just had this conversation with a client who said, hey, I'm a little concerned about fuel prices. Should we decrease our rates or provide a fuel saver discount or something to try to attract people to come out? And the answer is absolutely not. Number one, let's think about it. If you decrease your rates by 10 or 15%, you may be creating a savings on average of $10 a night. If someone's going to stay with you for 3 or 4 nights, is that $30 or $40 that they might be saving really going to contribute much to the extra fuel costs on their trip overall? And is it really going to convince them to come and still choose this more affordable vacation option over either still getting in a car and driving somewhere or hopping on a plane and flying somewhere? It's still the affordability analysis of camping, even with rates at sky high, record breaking numbers as they should be. It's still a more affordable vacation option. So don't be ashamed of your rates.
So I want to play, if you guys can hear me, I want to play devil's advocate for a second. I was trying to earlier, but none of my mics apparently work. This is the 4th one I tried.
We can hear you.
So, I will play devil's advocate on rates. First off, I agree with you. Don't cut your rates. But 2, is there, and this is just speculation, is there time where if inflation continues to go down the trajectory it goes down, whether it's just with gas prices or with everything, as we're seeing now with food and all the things. Everybody's expenses are going up everywhere. Is there a point in time that obviously I think we've all, at least I think, that our industry is pretty much recession proof. We've been through 2008. I think people just changed their behaviors and all those kinds of things. We've already hashed that out. But is there a point where to get people to camp more local and more often, that prices go up enough to where you do have to consider discounts, or is that never a thing?
I think you and my answer to that, and I'd be curious what Randy thinks as well, because I'm sure he's got something churning in there, is I really truly believe that guests will evaluate the overall price of vacation options, and when they still see that we are half as much as the hotel room nearby, if that, on average, we're still a more affordable vacation option. The value proposition is kind of built in to the industry. So I still don't see a point at which point it makes sense to discount rates. Now, if you are at a property that is, 3 or 4 hours from the nearest major metro, and your bookings are potentially much slower, you could explore opportunities for providing not a discount in rate, but if you have a storage area that or an area that could be used for storage, where maybe you provide an incentive for folks to drive the motorhome up, leave it there, and put it on a site when you're ready to come up one weekend, put it off, and you're saving the money of having to transport your RV from your home location. So that might be something to consider as well. I think there are other opportunities, if needed, other than discounting rates.
Yeah, I would agree. And just to mirror some of that, Scott, you can't give a blanket answer for every park. It's just not possible, because everybody knows their own park, their own demographics, their own location, their own challenges better than anybody else does. As a general rule, I don't favor discounting under almost any circumstances. And there are other ways to maximize somebody's stay. For example, without touching your rate, if you, sell the zip code, which is what we love talking about, network with a local restaurant or something like that, say, hey, you want to kick in 10% off of a dinner, something like that. If you can bundle external services to your park and give somebody a better value once they do show up, that they've got a discounted meal at this place or a discounted green feeds at the golf course or something, and kind of bundle something else where you don't have to hit rates, but you give better experience, you're still going to have the consumer dollar. And the truth of the matter is, the whole idea of rate as an experience, it's hard to quantify what value an experience is. And if you have a lot of great things to do at your property, if you can sell the zip code, whatever that might be, it could be hiking, it could be museums, it could be whatever like that. Consumers want an experience and will pay for that experience. I don't think the first line of defense is to discount. I think the first line of defense is to market better about what kind of experience a consumer will have when they arrive. And that makes discounting irrelevant to the conversation. Build a better experience, cross out with local community vendors. That's how you keep attracting people without hatcheting rates.
Well, I think I tend to agree with you completely. I just wanted to play devil's advocate there for a second, right? And now my dog is going to bark at me in the background because we just need one more thing to go noisy and wrong with the show today. But I think I tend to agree with you. I think I would keep, as an owner, some kind of a plan in place in my back pocket should I ever need something. I think if COVID has taught us anything, it's be prepared for all kinds of things to happen. But I think you're right. I think, Scott, to your point that the rates are comparable to, or not even comparable to, hotels nearby. I think for too long, many owners in this industry have been too afraid to raise their rates too quickly, whether it's dynamic pricing or $2 a year instead of what it really should be. And so I think that there's a lot of room to grow before that becomes an issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. There's a couple comments here in the thread. Jacob saying, great point on flight costs. Our team drove 22 hours from Edmonton to Colorado because it was cheaper than flying, even with the gas prices. And then CJ Sense says, good job, Scott. I was about to mention that storage, if you have it, is a good way to get people to come leave them out at home. I'll travel trailer and come back 2 or 3 weeks later. So, that was a great strategy that I used. You were able to leave your unit there and come back. I had lots of snowbirds who spent the winters in Arizona and left their RVs with me over the winter. And those were great ways to kind of provide an extra level of service and really, I think adding convenience really helps justify your rates. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that if you're not going to move your rates, which you shouldn't, downwards anyways, the guests are spending more of their money out of their pocket to come stay with you. The experience has to be on point. You have to, and as an industry, by focusing on creating the great guest experience and emphasizing in all the wonderful ways that our industry is so unique, we will retain a higher share of those first-time RVers. They will stay with us longer. And as an industry, we really have to focus on lifting each other up to support the guest experience standard and increase what that standard really means, so that when they show up and they've spent $500 filling their one tank of gas to come see you, it needs to be worth it for them. It always has been, but now more than ever.
Yeah.
I do want to tie these things together real quickly, because we talked about jobs in the beginning and the job fair and stuff like that. And now we're talking about, gas prices and discounting. Is there a point in time where you're like, we talked about owners kind of be slow walking their rate increases, being slow to adopt dynamic pricing and lot fees and things like that help them increase revenue? Is there a point in time where this competition to hire people, and thus raising wages and increasing costs at your park, is there a point in time where it forces you to raise your rates faster than you otherwise might have?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, it always decides. Always decides.
I know the answer is yes. I guess I'm looking for some clarity on like how do you manage that? If you run into a situation, do you do it all at once? Do you scale it in? Is there any use cases that you guys have heard in the industry?
Oh man, there are so many scenarios to walk through with that. I think a couple of months ago in the show, we talked when inflation really started to pick up and fuel prices were on the horizon for an increase. We talked about making sure that you're tracking your cost per occupied site and being very diligent to understand all of the operating expenses that are associated with your operation and how much it costs you per occupied site during that time frame to offer the service you did. And when you're looking at a season ahead, you should be updating your budget to reflect the new rates that you're having to pay. You're having to pay labor and talent to support the operation, and continually update your budget forecast so that you're staying ahead of what you think those expenses are going to be in the months ahead that you are forecasting for, and track those projected occupied nights that you think you're going to hit, and make sure that you're doing that calculation of your total operating expenses divided by the occupied sites or the occupied site nights, to track that cost per occupied site. Make sure that you're doing that every single week for the 3 or 4 months ahead. Randy, I'll toss it over to you if you've got something else.
Well, just to be clear, before we toss it to Randy, I just want to say, which is another huge benefit of having an accounting team that's familiar with the campground industry. So thanks to Fireside Accounting for sponsoring our episode one more time. But for real, I don't like to deal with those numbers, and I know there are some campground owners who don't. And even when you do, those little nuances are so critical to not only paying attention to how you're adjusting as you're talking about, but also how you're saving money to plan for more employees in the future and things like that. So go ahead.
You beat me to it, Brian, and it's something we've talked about before in the show. I know and Scott, I would say this even if Fireside wasn't sponsoring it, because my love for Fireside. But the thing of it is, when you're operating a campground, you're wearing so many hats. You've got so many things to do. You're answering phones. You're fixing a pipe when it breaks. If you're a one-off owner or something like that, no matter who you are in the whole chain of this whole thing, you've got a lot of things to do. One of the last things you do is manage on a molecular level what your cost of doing business actually is. it's indispensable. I think more so than any other cog in the wheel of operating a campground or RV parks very, very well. You've got to have campground specific accounting that's monitoring that in real time and giving you real data, because it's very disheartening to get to the end of the year, the end of the month, and do a look back and say, I had no idea my cost of doing business increased by 20%, but I didn't hit my rates by that much to offset it. I just operated a non-profit for a month because I wasn't watching my expenses. And just one last little point on that. I know there's a lot of consumers that are sensitive to the idea that, oh gosh, campgrounds are charging so much now and it must be greed. Not necessarily. Inflation hits a lot of things. Goods cost more, labor costs more, permits cost more, insurance costs more. You have to, as a business, pass those on. And it's not that you're trying to make a windfall. You're merely trying to maintain margins that allow you to keep providing good services and a good experience. So again, tying it all back to accounting, if that's not really the cog in your wheel, if you're not bird dogging that relentlessly, you can really get yourself in trouble.
Mm-hmm. And I would say too, in terms of how you, if you recognize that you need to increase your rates to keep up with your expenses, it really depends on the type of property that you operate and how you go about doing that. And what I mean specifically is, if you operate an extended stay focused property where perhaps 70, 80 or more % of your overall business is extended stay, 30 days or longer, you need to be much more mindful, number one, of any sort of stipulations that might be pertaining to your operation from a local code or municipality or something. There shouldn't be, but make sure that you're tracking how often you're increasing. But more from an experience standpoint, from a guest perspective, you do not want to hit monthly guests with continued rate increases. That has to be planned out in advance. So you really need to understand the frequency of when you're hitting those rate increases. And when you do hit those rate increases, make sure it's enough to kind of future proof, knowing that expenses are going to continue to increase, because you really probably won't be able to get away with increasing rates again for a long time without a lot of pushback.
Bingo.
Right.
Oh, am I supposed to say something now? You guys were carrying the show just fine without me. What do you need me now for?
No, we can keep going for hours. You know that.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, that's the thing. That's why I love this open discussion group of guests, because you guys have so much experience and stuff like that. But, I want to let's bring it back to jobs just for a second, because I wanted to touch on this, briefly. And my mic just wasn't working, so I couldn't ask the questions. But Scott, you said the job fair. How much is involved in setting up something like that for a park owner who is struggling with hiring? How much resources and time and effort and cost needs to go into putting something together like that, to advertising, to see the success that you guys have had?
And I'll say that again, this was the first time we've gone through this, so that's been the realm of our experience with it. But it has been extremely simple, much more than I thought that it would be. Our marketing team put together a flyer that we then had our on-site GMs who are tapped into the local communities. They know the Facebook groups of the local communities, and it was free advertising primarily within Facebook and local community resources to let that job fair be known. We held it over a period of 4 hours yesterday, and we're doing the 4 hours again on Saturday. And we were able to have folks reserve times during that for interviews, or it was just walk-in only. So it was very simple, especially as a place of business in the area that you're attracting talent from. You have the facility to host this at on site at your property, and it's a great idea, if it is held at your property, to take those applicants around and have a walking interview with them. Don't sit across the table. That's the worst thing you could do, because they're not going to be sitting across the table from your guests other than maybe through a check-in experience. Walk with them, help them understand what an RV park is, or an RV resort campground is, and make sure that you feel like they're excited about it, again, because you're trying to hire that personality, you're trying to hire that care gene. And if they show no interest at all, this is just something they're showing up for, then move on. But back to your point, Brian, it was as simple as creating the flyers, finding the community groups to post them in, choosing dates and times, and it's gone extremely well.
Awesome. It's interesting, the walking interview thing. I wanted to, I have to say, I equate this. I used to do this at my park, but I equate it with trying to get my kids to open up and talk to me. I always load them in the car and we drive. And for some reason, when we're not facing each other, when we're side by side and we're looking that way, those kids can open up. They say all kinds of things that, you know, they wouldn't maybe say if we were looking face to face. You know, I think that's just human condition stuff where you kind of feel this, I don't know what it is, the side by side thing
takes
really
the pressure off.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I will say this, specific to your care gene, too. You know, you and I have had conversations about that before. Randy and I have had conversations about that before, and I completely agree with you. But I think there's also an opportunity to, while you can't give someone that care gene, there is an opportunity to increase the level of care that they show based on how you treat them and what you provide them and how the benefits are at your company and all those kinds of things. And so I know that's too deep of a discussion to get into right now, but I think that there's a danger in just immediately dismissing someone because you don't necessarily see that either. Maybe they just haven't been given the opportunity before to really shine because they haven't been treated well.
It's an important thing, Brian, and there's actually a subtlety. You can teach hospitality skills, and there are scripts, and there are things you can highlight and coach on the dialogue. But I think the point is, at least from my perspective, if you have what we call the care gene, that becomes second nature, and you're inclined to do that sort of thing anyway, because when you're engaged like that, hospitality, you almost couldn't stop that from happening if you've got that sort of a personality in the care gene. You can teach the skills of hospitality. It's just a whole lot easier if they legitimately have, like Scott said, the smile in their voice and they're engaged and participating. Man, that's a great journey there.
Yeah, it's so natural to us when we're in a kind of positive environment that's supportive and inherently like collaborative and all of those things. Then that positivity just comes out in how we interact with each other, and it's infectious and contagious. It certainly is up to us as operators and owners and operators to foster those environments. It's worth every moment of the effort, for sure.
And that's my thing. Like, I think I'm sorry, you're delayed a little bit, but I think that's part of my thing. Like, I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here, right? So many things are changing. So many things are evolving. It is harder to hire people, but they're changing in such a rapid pace, not just for campground but for small business owners in general. Like, I've had to adapt some of the benefits that I'm giving and how I interact with people, and, you know, not necessarily how I treat them, but how I treat them. In other words, like how I approach certain situations and things like that. And so I think in some cases, maybe there just needs to be, and maybe this is something that all of us on this call and some other leaders in the industry perhaps need to work on, is, you know, we've got this resource director and Modern Campground that talks about suppliers and businesses that provide these things. But just like kind of we did during the pandemic with Cara, where we for other businesses, we created those graphics for social media that we provided for free on insiderperks.com. Maybe there's a way that we can create resources and templates and how-tos on how to do a job fair and how to hire people and what benefits to provide and where to go to get them. And I think that associations do a great job of doing that to a certain extent, but I think there are some gaps that can be filled in necessarily some places.
Absolutely. I keep talking about Marsha with Normandy Farms. I was smitten, and she gave a speech at the NCA conference or a talk about building a team with especially with seasonal employees, and how important it is to go through and do personality quizzes and understand how people need to learn and how they best interact with others, so that you can, in the perfect world, when we're not up against almost taking anybody that is willing to come in these days, in the perfect world, taking that time to understand each and every team member, how they operate best, and view them as a puzzle. How do you put this puzzle together to extract the best talent out of each person? And then each other team member knows that this other person responds the best when I do this. And
Yeah.
it might seem like it's a lot to keep track of and do, but it's something you can do during the hiring process and your beginning of season employee meetings and kickoff process. That won't take that much time. So to your point, Brian, there are some great personality quizzes that could be referenced back to Modern Campground that through the resources that you guys have available as you work to put this together as a great framework for how to figure out how your team operates the best.
I wish I could remember which one I took. Like, it was a big, there was all kinds of tests. It was like $100 or something that I had our team take years ago. It starts with a D, I think, but it was a really comprehensive, like, it gave you a 40-page breakdown of your personality and how you, like, there was certain different ones for businesses, and I'll find the name of it and put it somewhere later, maybe in the comment section of the thing. But I will play that just because I'm on this devil's advocate theme, right? The flip side of that is how you behave as a boss too. And so one of the things I used to do with our employees is I took the personality test myself, and I would give them all a copy of how I am and how I act and what I like and all those things. And so I think it's a middle ground between, yes, they need to adapt to the way you do business, but you also need to adapt to them too, and making each other more cognizant of how the other person likes, behaves, traits, behaviors, things like that only sets you up for even greater success versus just the one way from the employee.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting when you pay attention to those concepts. I remember early on in my years, I was quite young when I suddenly became a campground owner. And I remember really struggling to manage like the personnel dynamic where I think I feel like I remember saying to my mom or somebody I could kind of confide in saying, I feel like I'm managing a bunch of junior high school students. Like there's all this drama and stress and strain. And then, over the next following couple of years, I started to try to address those things in different ways and pay more attention to the personality interactions and strategize around them. And it really, not only did it have an impact on like my daily stress level and herding the cats and things like that, but then also, I believe in our bottom line, we were able to just be more efficient and provide better guest service and so many things that were great outcomes of that. It's kind of another hat to wear where you're like managing the personalities and things like that. That's
and I know I'm sorry, go ahead.
You have to manage the personalities for sure, and they're definitely all great talking points. There was a book I read many, many years ago that said, don't focus on trying to put in what's been left out, try to draw out what's been left in. What are they best at and what are they good at, and foster that creativity. But, the other thing that's always been, I think, kind of elusive for a lot of folks is people, you could have the greatest RV resort in the world with great amenities and really, really cool. The employees don't necessarily stay there because you've got a great park. They stay based on the relationship they have with their immediate supervisor. So every level down the hiring tree has got to have that sort of relationship and empower the people that they work with in their charges. Because let's face it, I mean, we've probably all done it. We didn't quit because the company was bad. We couldn't handle our boss. So that kind of training throughout the organization is just absolutely critical. You got to care about your people.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Before we crossed paths, is we talked about, and I'm just going to close it out here because we got a couple more minutes before the show ends up. But the care gene is not just from an employee standpoint; it's from an employer standpoint too.
Yes,
and I've had to teach myself this over the years quite a bit, and sometimes I forget to remember to do this too. But it's amazing and astounding how far how are you doing today? We appreciate you. Tell me about what happened over your weekend. What happened with your kids in soccer game last night that you told me you were going to, that you needed to leave work 30 minutes for. It is stunning how far that goes.
It's amazing.
I think that's my biggest takeaway from being a campground owner was the level of self-awareness. The requirement for me to constantly look in the mirror and see all my flaws and be like, wow, I'm less awesome than I thought. We should fix that. It was a huge, it really impacted my own personal development so much. It's big mirror.
And I know we got to go, but guess what else happens? That whole paradigm, Cara, that you just hit it really, really well. If your company or your organization or your park starts with a mission statement or a culture that you wish to embrace, and you reflect that outward, and you've got that care gene, and you want your people to feel valued because you legitimately do care, guess what happens? That comes back to you. They also care about you. They care about your park. They're going to bring you ideas that maybe you didn't think of. They're going to think of ways to innovate to make it better. And isn't that a great place to go to work? Whether you're the boss, the employee, or whatever you want to call it, what if you're part of that organization? That's a fun day. That's a good way to look at it.
Well, that's the thing. We talk about this struggle to hire, and it's always going to exist depending on how the economy goes up and down, and inflation and all the things that were unexpected, right? And it's hard from a small business owner standpoint to always. We've talked before about raising your rates and paying more benefits and doing things that cost you money out of your pocket that's already probably running on small margins in most cases as a small business owner. But these things, these ways that you can show employees that you care by asking them these questions, by doing the things that Randy and Scott have talked about, and so many more that we're not even talking about, are free. And if you can execute this strategy correctly, even if you're not giving the best benefits, if people know that you care and that they're going to be valued when they come to work and that you really, really appreciate what they're doing, you're going to get a lot more people banging down your door.
That's right.
Yep. Absolutely. And my final point would be to that too, Brian, is if you recognize that you've been in this business for 40 years and you're tired and, these guests just make you grumpy now, that's okay. It's okay to say, I'm no longer the person that should be leading this, and find that talent to be able to create that culture for you. Because if you don't have the culture, and if you can't or don't want to build it, that's okay. But find someone that will, because it's going to be paramount to your success.
You bet.
All right. Any final thoughts? I think that was a pretty good way to end it.
That one was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one. So, okay.
That
Well,
was
thank
fun.
you guys all for joining us on MC Fireside Chats. Another episode in the books here. We want to thank our first sponsor ever, Fireside Accounting. Really appreciative of them. I know I kind of maybe messed it up in the beginning with my mic issues, but super grateful to have them and Lindsay and her team being a sponsor of this show. Again, we've talked throughout this show about numbers and the importance of things like that. You really can't put a price on what a good accounting team who knows this industry can do for you, both from a budgetary standpoint and all the things that we've discussed. So if you are a campground owner, you're watching the show, you're looking to save money, which I feel like there's no one who would say no to that, then maybe perhaps you want to pick up the phone and give Lindsay and her team a call at Fireside Accounting. But other than that, Cara, any last words?
No, thanks guys for joining us. I always relish in the conversations I get to share with you, and love your perspectives and outlook on the industry, and already can't wait for next month's conversation.
Likewise.
All right.
Thanks, Cara. Thanks, Brian.
Join us next week. I believe we have the RV Share CEO on the show and a few other guests. So we're super excited about that show. And we are available as a podcast and all those kinds of things as well. So really appreciate you joining us for another episode. And we will see you guys next week.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of MC Fireside Chats, hosted by Brian Searl and Cara Csizmadia. Have a suggestion for a future show or want to see your campground or company as part of an episode? Email us at hello@moderncampground.com. Join us next week for another episode. And don't miss the latest outdoor hospitality news and commentary from around the world at moderncampground.com.